Ahoy hoy! Today we're going back to part 2, well actually we're going to part 2 of the video we created last week where we created a Node REST API, but we didn't have a database. So this time we're going to create the database, we're going to connect the database all up, and then we're going to get things from the database. And last week I had a plan and it all went completely catastrophically wrong. I had to record the video 2 times, so this time there's no plan. We're just going to take a flyer, we're going to see how things pan out. So let's have a gander. This is the file, if you remember from last week, roots.js, and all we're doing here is we've defined 2 roots. The index root, bloody Nora, you made it. And the other one where we got a photo of a Dave that turned out not to be a photo of a Dave. See last week's video for the surprise. God, I'm mad. Right, now we're going to start creating the database stuff. We're going to connect all the up to the database. It's going to be all very good. We need to create 3 new files. Yeah, let's do 3 new files because we're going to do a config file, we're going to do the database file so we can keep things nice and modular using the nice principles of software development, so we keep everything doing one thing. It's going to be very nice. I'm also going to create a new type of file that you may not have heard before called a .env file, a .env file as I like to call it. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's first create the .env file. So actually, let's run the app. So I've got it running because I'll forget about it otherwise. So let's say atom.env, and we're going to create this. All this is, this thing is a key value store, but it's a hidden file. That's why the dot's there. If you ever do put things on GitHub or anything like this, you're going to need to do things like user.env file, so you can have config data like passwords, secrets, all sorts of lovely stuff like that, but you'll add it to a git ignore file, which I can show you how to do if you have used git init on your project, so you actually have it on a git thing. Oh god, I'm rambling. Right, so key value pairs. We're going to say db host equal to localhost. db port, we're going to be using MySQL, so for those of you who know MySQL, it's going to be 3306. We're going to say db user. I'm going to go rogue and we're going to use root. Try not to use root for everything, it's a bad idea, but YOLO. Password is just going to be in there as that. Do we need anything else? No. So that's it for the .env file. All very nice, all very lovely. Let's now connect that up using the config file. Oakley dokley. So let's first create a config file. So we're going to say touch.config. We're also going to create the database file while we're at it. So say database.js. So that command I've just used there, touch, all it does is create files. So if I do that now, we can see there are 2 new files, the config and the database file. So let's go ahead and open a config file. We are going to first need to import a new dependency, which we haven't installed yet, called .env. So we're going to say require. If you remember from last week, it's how we install dependencies, or how we attach dependencies, should I say. Do that. And then all we're going to do is just going to create an object called env. Right? It's just going to be an object. It's a dead simple little dictionary style object, where we're going to just map what we just created in that env file to this new config. Why are we doing this? Well, just to keep things nice and modular. We could do this in the database file, but then we're doing more than one thing. Typically not a good idea. For a small app like this, it really doesn't matter, but you should try to always get in the habit of using best practices at all time, because then when it matters, you'll just do it naturally. Okay, and then we're also going to say db pass, and that's just going to be process.env and then pass. There we go. Last thing we need to do is we need to say modules. Whoops. .export. Is it modules or is it module? No, it's module, I think. We'll soon find out. Module.exports env. That's all we need to do for the config file. My god, this is easy. Right, now let's go on to the database file. Database file, we're going to have to import a new dependency. We're going to use MySQL for the database. We haven't created the database yet, but we are going to do that. You'll see how bloody easy it is to create a MySQL database, or at least a really simple one. Require MySQL. We're also going to want to import that config that we just created. So we say require, and because it's a local file, we're going to do ./config, and that's probably everything we need to import for that. So now, we're also going to do this. We're going to say we are going to also import the not import. We're going to do the export, but we're going to do it at the top of the file this time because we're fun. Module.exports. Then we're going to say that. There you go. So first thing to do, let's create the connection. So we're going to say database dot. So we're basically using this thing we created here, and it will already be ready to export. So fun little way of doing things like that. And we are going to say equals, and then we're going to pass in the parameter database, and that's just going to be the database schema that we're going to use. So the reason you might want to pass in the database is because you might want to connect to many different databases on the fly, and that's how you do that. We'll talk about what a schema is later on when we create the database. So create connection. All we're doing here is just returning the connection. I'm going to say, again, it's one of these key value style things. DB host. I'm going to also say port env.port. Then we're going to say user. And you probably can guess db.user. Is it pass or password? I think it's password. It's password. I think, yeah, YOLO. It'll soon work out. We're also going to say database. I'm going to say env. Oh, not env. We're going to say database. I'm going to pass in that database variable. There we go. That's everything we need to do to connect to the database. Now, let us create a little method so that we can pull things from the database. All we're going to say is database. Dot, we're going to say get stuff. Oh, look at that. There's already a method like that because I'm creative with my things. Get stuff, and how do we do this? Let's think. We do this. We're going to pass in res. That's all we're going to pass in here. And do a little lambda. And const query. So we're going to create a query string here. If you're familiar with SQL, we're just going to say select from stuff. Yeah. So if you don't know SQL, SQL is structured query language, I think it stands for. Select basically means find the thing in the database. This star means get all the columns. So for example, we could have two columns, say ID and name, right, in a database table, and this query will get the ID and name and nothing else. Let's say we also had a column called, test. If we didn't include test in this query, it wouldn't get the test ones. But if we just say star, it gets everything from the database table stuff. So that's what's going on there. A little bit of fun. So what do we need to do? We need to. We also need to get the connection. So we're going to get the connection here. We're going to say const con, and we need to say database dot get connection, and we're going to give the database table a schema a name. What we're going to call it? We haven't created it yet, so we can call it whatever we like. Testy McTest face. What a classic name. Then we need to say con query, and we start by passing in that query string. So query, then we want to get the error. If there's an error, we want to get rows, and we also could do with getting fields. That's not really going to matter for this example. Do that. Then we'll say if there's an error. So if the error is not like null, if there is actually an error, what we're going to do? Well, first thing we're going to do, console log the error so we can see what's going wrong. Then we're also going to say console log, a helpful little message for our users, or actually whoever's administrative doing the looking at the console. That's all I'm going to say. I can't be bothered to use those long-winded words today. I'm going to say you tit, you broke it. There we go. In fairness, the person looking at this might not have actually broke it. It'll probably be some user somewhere that's done something they shouldn't have done. So some tit broke it. But yeah, that's probably better. We'll change that. Some tit broke it. Some tit broke it. That is a much more helpful logging statement. Then, basically what we're saying here is we're going to do the query, pass in the function. If there's an error, do this. If there's not an error, what does that mean? It means we've got the data from the database. So what do we want to do? We're going to say res send, and then we'll just say rows, right? We're only going to have one column in our database as well. This is going to be the easiest thing ever. We'll say res send rows. Now that hopefully should print out to the screen over here, but I have a feeling it won't, and if it won't, we're going to go through it together and work out what we need to do, because I can't remember for the life of me at the moment. So this should all work actually at the moment. We need to add here, we need to say database, and this is in the roots file, require, because it's a local one, like that. We also need to add the root, so let's say router get, we'll call it db, we'll say rec res. We're not going to say res, we're going to say database dot get stuff, and we're going to pass in the res. Okay, that looks to be good. That's basically a really nice easy way. So now you can probably see as well how doing things in separate files, so we've got the database in one file, we've got the config in one file, has meant that we've got this really easy to read code. I know we're not doing anything here, but you can see that this one method, all it's doing is saying, okay, get stuff. This route just gets stuff from the database, but it doesn't have all this gumph. That's in a separate bit, so it's easier to understand what's going off. And if we were to just refresh the page now, I'm pretty sure it's going to give us an error. It might, okay, so it hasn't given us an error because I'm not at the right route, I'm at the index. Right, okay, it's broken it. So we look to the console 3, there is an error, SumTip broke it. We can also see this whole gumph here that's gone off. Essentially, there is an error, there is no password, so let me just fix the M file because I'm pretty sure that's where the problem is. I'll be a few seconds. Okay, I'm a clown. One of the things I forgot about in the config is we need to actually do stuff with this little .m thing. We need to say .env.config for it to actually start working. I hope that starts working, because if it doesn't, I'm going to look like a right fool. Let's have a gander. Has this worked now? Bad DB. Okay, this is good. Okay, so now we've got a bad DB error. Why have we got a bad DB error? Because we haven't actually created the database yet. So what do we know? We're actually logged in, and SumTip broke it. In this case, it was me. So let's go to the MySQL. So MySQL user root, and then we'll put in the password. Type in the password, and we're going to create a schema. Create schema, and we'll call it testy Merc test face. There we go. Put a little semicolon at the end. Query OK. One row affected. So that works. So what a schema is schema is like a collection of database tables. There can be many database tables within a schema, and then a table has the rows that have the data in it. So now I'm going to say use testy Merc test face. So now we're actually on the right database. And if we say create table, we're going to call it stuff, aren't we? And we're going to pass in, we're going to say, I don't know, message, massage, message. And we're going to call it, we're going to make it a varchar. So that's going to be var. I think that's wrong. It's varchar. And that's going to be 225. So varchar is just variable characters. 225 means we can have 255 of 255 of them, should I say? And yeah, so we could also say we could do something like this. We could say int. There are other things you could do as well. You could say like blob, but we're going to say varchar because we're only going to put in the string. It's not going to be very long. And if we do that, query OK, there we go. And if I now just check we've actually created that properly, describe, and I say describe stuff. Oh, look at that. So we've got in our table, we've got the field is the message, got what its type is it null? What's the default? There's no default, there's no key, there's nothing extra. So dead simple, about as simple as you could possibly get for a database table. Now what do we need to do? Oh, I know what we need to do, Shane. We need to insert some data into the database. Okay, so let's say insert into, then you put your table name like that, and then you put in your column names that you want to put in. So for example, we're going to just put message here. Let's say you wanted to insert into 4, let's say 2, because I'm not typing out 4 columns at once. Let's say we had more than one, column in this database. We could also say, test, and that's how you would do that. But we're just going to say message. It needs to be in parentheses, otherwise it won't work. Values, and then again parentheses, and we're going to say this is from the database. Don't be alarmed. There we go. Oh, what have I done wrong? Oh, I can see what I've done wrong. I'm a moron. Oh, that's going to be a horrible string. Okay, I actually put a double quotes, and then I put a single quotes at the end of it, so then I had to put another double quotes at the end of it. Oh, that was terrible. Right, so let's do another insert. So we can insert into stuff. And we'll just add another message, and we'll say values, and we'll say another one. There we go. So let's just check that we've got the stuff in the database. So we'll say select from stuff. Oh, does this look familiar? This is the query string we used in the Node.js thingy earlier. Look at that. That's what we're going to get back. And you can see what I did wrong in this one. I put that there. Oh, terrible. Utterly horrendous, that is. Okay, let us go back to the extra cheeky thing now. We're on the config file, so that's all working. So we're going to say res and rows. We actually don't need to change anything because this should just work, I think, although it might just go to the console and not go to here. But let's have a look. Will it work? Oh my god, it worked! It worked! Look at that. We've got it, and it's come back as a JSON thing. Oh, this is great. This is how we would do things with this data. This is brilliant. So now you can see how really easily we've defined a route, we have connected to the database, we've configured the database, we've had a query string from the database. Wow, this is great. And, we have an error, so we saw the error, we saw what was going wrong. We've now sent the rows. What about if we wanted to, for example, and this is a SQL thing more than a Node.js thing, but let's say we said limit 1. What's going to happen to that now? We're going to get one message back. Wowzers trousers. Look at this. It's all working. There we are. Hopefully someone found that helpful. If you didn't find it helpful, I hope you found it amusing. So if you have any questions, comments, leave them in the doobly-doo below. If you want to subscribe, I'm doing more videos like this more and more often. They're going to get better and better, I think. Thank you very much for watching.